The NFL trade deadline has passed, and the Broncos only made one trade. They dealt Baron Browning yesterday to the Arizona Cardinals, but of note, they did not bring anyone in after there being some chatter and some rumors about the Broncos maybe being buyers for a receiver, a tight end, or maybe even a running back. Ultimately, Sean and George Payton stand pat. So we're going to react to the trade deadline and the moves and also the lack of moves the Broncos made. But the move they did make was dealing Baron Browning from the Broncos to the Cardinals. Here's my reaction to this trade, which I don't think everyone is in agreement on, and it seems like a 50-50 split, so feel free to weigh in the comment section if you like this deal or not. But for me, I like this trade for Denver for 3 reasons. I'll keep it nice and short and concise. Reason number 1, he's on an expiring contract. Were you going to bring him back? Probably not after you just signed Cooper to an extension. Reason number 2, was he widely available for you? No, unfortunately not. Injuries are not in his control for the most part, but yeah, he had missed a lot of games over the last 2 to 3 years. And then reason number 3, was he starting? No, Nick Bonito was. Browning lost his starting job when he came off of IR since Bonito put up 6 sacks in 6 straight weeks, and Cooper's been balling out opposite of 15. So he's on an expiring deal. He's not starting. And he's been dealing with a lot of injuries the last couple of years. What am I missing for this not being a good deal for Denver, aside from the go-to argument of depth? Yeah, depth's a good thing, especially at 5-4, where you feel like, hey, this is a team that can make the playoffs, and you want to have a lot of depth at a really good, important position like edge rusher. But can I push back on that and say, you do have depth? You've got rookie Jonah Ellis. You've got former UDFA DeAndre Tillman. Those are 2 guys that have more sacks than Browning this year. So if the only argument is, well, we could have some really good depth at an important position, I've got good news for you. The depth is still there. And hopefully Drew Sanders returns soon. But even if not, Ellis has shown me some really good stuff. Tillman was awesome in that Buccaneers game. If something were to happen to Cooper or Bonito, I don't think the ship is going to go down because Browning is no longer on the team. So I know that the 6th-round draft pick isn't going to really move mountains, but it's still better than nothing for a guy that you were going to let walk in free agency because you're likely not going to re-sign him. Even if you put the Cooper extension to the side for a moment, would you really going to re-sign a guy who, look at what he's put up the last couple of years, and I'm looking at one stat only, games played. Last year, 10 games. Season before that, 14 games. This year, 5 games. That's 3 straight years. And put his rookie year to the side, because there's always an adjustment going from collegiate to the pro ranks, of 3 straight years of missing at least 3 games. Where in the NFL, the best ability is availability. I like Browning a lot as a player because I think he showed us in his first year as an outside linebacker when he was drafted as an inside linebacker that he can make the adjustment well. And then in year 2 of being an outside linebacker in 2023, misses the first chunk of the year, comes out, and balls out in my eyes. 4.5 sacks in 10 games might not be a big needle mover for some, but I always thought Browning played well and generated a lot of pressure. 2 forced fumbles to add to that as well. But if you can get a 6th-rounder for a guy that I went over for 3 good reasons is probably in the best interest of this team to be elsewhere, I think it's a good deal. So Denver now has 3 6th-round draft picks. I don't expect them to keep all 3 6th-rounders. They're probably going to try and use those picks as some chips to move up or down in the draft a little bit and make some deals and make some trades. It's just good currency to have as a GM to try and add a little sweetener to a deal you're trying to make. So should the Broncos have added a player? That's what we're going to talk about next on the show. Whether or not Denver should have added a running back, a receiver, or a tight end. But I do want to get your thoughts down below in the comment section. So let's go over the 3 positions that were widely discussed as areas of need for Denver at the deadline. Running back, wide receiver, tight end. You can kind of rank them in any preference order you want. Tight end has made a bit of a resurgence the last couple of weeks, so maybe that knocks it down a little bit. Wide receiver maybe goes up a little bit with the injury to Josh Reynolds and the shooting to Josh Reynolds. And then running back, you can put it wherever you want because on one hand, they're all healthy, which wide receiver can't say, but they're better than tight end, but they're also more important than tight end. So it's not an easy one to, decipher in terms of the level of importance for those three position groups. Would I have liked to have seen Denver add one of those three spots? For the right price, sure. Am I honestly upset they didn't? Not really. I feel like Denver is doing an incredible job this year, given what the expectations were from Vegas and the national media and whatnot. 5-4 at the deadline was not something most teams thought the Broncos would be at this point of the year. But I did not think that they should take this and run with it after winning 2 games in the last 3 weeks against the Saints, who just fired their head coach, and the Panthers, who just picked up their second win, and thought, yeah, let's be aggressive at the deadline. Let's give up some valuable assets. If they wanted to trade away a 6th or a future 7th, have at it. That's never going to be a deal where I feel like you could be a big loser at. But if they were going to deal anything rounds 1 through 5, you better be getting a player who you have a long-term vision for. Because I didn't think this team in 2024 was just one piece away from from being a wild card appearance to going all the way to the AFC Championship. And those are the kind of deals you should make for contending teams. If you're looking for short-term rentals, half of the season, guys who can kind of get you over the edge, like Von Miller to the Rams. That made a ton of sense for LA, and it worked out great. Denver is not in a spot where they should make those types of deals. And there really wasn't, I guess, anyone worth trading for that they had long-term aspirations for. So I'm not too upset that they did not go out and acquire a player. Before we look at the rest of the video today, I do want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, GameTime. GameTime has an awesome feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. One thing I love about GameTime is they offer the GameTime guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. So another move that Denver made that was not about player acquisition or trade was Jonathon Cooper, who they extended to a nice 4-year, $60 million extension with an average of $15 million a season and guaranteed $33 million. For Cooper, I like this deal a lot. I mean, for starters, former 7th-round draft pick gets $33 million guaranteed. That's not very common, guys. Believe me, this is one of the most rare 7th-round picks in the last couple of drafts. So, awesome deal for Jonathon Cooper. Sure, he could have bet on himself. He could have waited until free agency, maybe opened up a little bit of a, bidding war for his services and maybe drive up the price a little bit. But, man, $33 million guaranteed, that's tough to say no to given the risk of injury could wipe that all away. And for Denver, $15 million a season for the second most valuable position in the NFL right now for a guy that had 8.5 sacks last year and has 5.5 sacks this year halfway through the season, putting him on track to match, if not exceed, what he did in his breakout 2023 campaign. This, to me, is a big win for both parties here. I like this extension a lot. The Broncos made a somewhat similar extension to Tim Patrick and Courtland Sutton right around this time in 2022 or 2021. Yeah, it's been that long. The thing that sunk those extensions were injuries for Patrick, and for Sutton, a combination of underwhelming play from Courtland and just a bad cycle of quarterbacks and coaches and play callers that I don't think is enough to completely give Courtland a pass for what was a down 2022 or 2021 and 2022 season, and up until his 10 touchdowns in 2023 was disappointing given what they were paying him and the production they were getting out of it. So for me, I'm not too worried about looking at those two extensions and feeling like, okay, this is going to be the same thing all over again. For edge rushers, it's not as complex as receivers. They're not reliant as much on the other guys, right? A receiver needs a good quarterback to be successful more often than not. An edge rusher, it's one-on-one. Beat the tackle in front of you and get to the quarterback. Sure, having another good other rest of good defensive line will help because it'll take some of the spotlight off of you and maybe reduce some of the double teams you run into. But for the most part, it's mano-a-mano. So I'm not too concerned about looking at the previous midseason extensions given out and thinking, okay, it's going to be that all over again. But there's also a good sign of the Broncos draft class from 2021. It's looking pretty good. I mean, you're never really going to nail every single pick. It's a crapshoot. But they've already extended the number one corner in the entire National Football League, Patrick Surtain. They locked up Quinn Miners for the long term. He's one of the best guards in football. And then you take your 7th-round pick, Cooper, and you get $15 million for the second most important position and a guy that's about to put up back-to-back 8+ sack seasons. Talk about great value at a very important position. So I really like the Cooper extension. Before we go, let's just kind of revisit all the trades that happened today in case you were busy at work and didn't get to see them. Zadarius Smith early this morning got dealt from the Browns to the Lions in the least surprising trade of the day. This one had been talked about for weeks. It was just a matter of time. Khalil Herbert went from the Bears to the Bengals for a 7th-rounder. So if you wanted to add a running back, this is roughly what the price was for a RB2/RB3, and I would have been okay with this if the Broncos made a trade for Herbert, gave up a 7th-rounder, and it didn't work out. All right, 7th-round pick. Outside of Jonathon Cooper, go find me another good 7th-rounder in recent history. This is the funniest trade of the day. Jonathan Mingo. I'll tell you exactly what happened here, because the Cowboys gave up a 4th-round pick for someone who has 12 receptions this year. Amari Cooper went for a 3rd. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins even went for this much. What happened here was Jerry Jones does what Jerry likes to do, which is get back to players he wanted to draft, but unfortunately were taken right before him, and overpay for their services because he really liked them coming out of the draft, and they think they can push the right buttons and get the right coaching in and get the best out of Mingo. This was a bad deal right here. And then there was the DeAndre Hopkins trade, speak of the devil, a conditional 4th-round draft pick. Like, Mingo went for a 4th. Don't let anyone tell you, by the way, that, well, they got a 7th-rounder back. No, it doesn't work that way. If we're using that logic of they got a 7th, but they gave up a 4th, so it's kind of like a late 5th, okay, I'll trade you my 7th for your 1st, and we'll call it a 3rd. Would you make that deal? No. Like, would you make that, not deal, but would you make that comparison of, like, that's basically the equivalent of what this trade was? Of course not. And then Amari Cooper, this was weeks ago, which is why probably this trade deadline today really wasn't jam-packed with star players getting moved. Cooper was already traded. Devontae Smith was already traded. Some of the firepower was already moved. If you wanted to add a receiver today, Mike Williams went for a 5th, maybe a return to the AFC West. I would not have hated this for Denver. I wish they made this deal. To be honest, I think Williams is kind of washed at this point. So it's unfortunate because I think that ACL injury really took a lot of gas out of him because he had dealt with so many injuries earlier on in his career. And just when he kind of is getting out of the woods and he's putting together a really strong season, he goes down in week 2 of 2023. And he was fighting for targets, especially with Adams coming over and Garrett Wilson, who I think leads the NFL in targets. He became quickly the odd man out. If the Broncos had traded for him, I wouldn't have been too upset, but I'm not too upset they didn't trade for him. Preston Smith went from the Packers to the Steelers. I know a 7th-rounder looks super cheap, but you know it's not cheap? The rest of Preston Smith's contract. So the Steelers are taking on a decent financial hit. Tre'Davious White, this was the funniest trade of the day. They just swapped 7th-rounders. And they don't even know what pick they're going to have in the 7th round. I mean, there's a chance that the Rams trade Zadarius Smith away and move up in round 7 based on where they finish. Because it's not even this year's draft. It's 2026 and then 2027. So basically the Rams are like, well, we're just going to release you, but the Ravens really want you, so we might as well get something for you. Although they're getting a pick earlier, which is nice for Les Snead because no one likes being patient. But it's not even guaranteed it's any earlier in the actual draft order. This was a funny trade. All right, before we sign off, I do want to show some love to the Blue and Orange Club. Slap Yourself, I Don't Give a Buck, John E., Anthony, Bobby, and Rick. Really appreciate you guys for being such loyal and devout supporters of the channel. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch up with everyone tomorrow.